Howdy there neighbors, Ian with eTrailer here. Today we're going to be looking at the B&W fifth wheel rail kit for our 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 2500. Let's take a look at some of the features and then I'll get into the install. And so we've got a short box here today. There is a separate measurement to be able to take for long boxes. We're going to be throwing a slider in this one, so he's going to have all that adjustability regardless of it being the short box. With these rails, they will work with any industry standard fifth wheel, so that's a really great feature of these. You don't have to worry about having just a B&W fifth wheel hitch. If you've already got a fifth wheel hitch, these should work with that. I did want to touch on the ease of installation of these. If you're looking at a set of bed rails and you're really wondering what's going to be the easiest for me to do in my driveway or do in my garage, I think anybody could tackle these really simply. A couple drill bits and some sockets and a good torque wrench, which if you need one, you can either get one from us on our website or you could rent one from the local hardware store or parts store. But it's an extremely easy install, very, very quick, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at most, cooking through it. So let's hop right into that install and I'll show you how easy this is really going to be with those custom brackets. So to get this going, we've already got our spare tire removed. I've got that out of the way just so we've got access to as much as we need under here. Also, we're going to pull this heat shield off because we will need to get to the back of the frame here. So a couple 13mm bolts. Got the first one out already, just going to pull this second one. There's going to be one more heat shield to take off here, this one right above the pipe. Just makes it a little easier to get the brackets into place once we're ready for that. So those again are just 13mm and there's a total of 4 all the way across that bracket. Now we want to go ahead and get our measurements for this rear rail. Check the instructions on that because it's going to explain the difference between the long bed and the short bed and where you need to make your marks. I've already gone ahead and used just a paint pen to start and marked exactly where we're going to need it on both sides, so that way I can get that rear rail in place and get it lined up to be able to get our holes drilled. One thing I did want to mention about setting up this rear rail as well is if you've got a spray-in bed liner, make sure you factor in the thickness of that bed liner. We really want these center holes that we're marking right now to line up correctly with what's going to be underneath the bed, so definitely worth noting. To get this centered out, all I've done is just measure from the edge of our rail here out to the end of the fender wells, getting that even on both sides. And then you'll want to check the instructions, but ours happen to show that this third slot in is where we're going to be putting our bolts through on each end. So I've got both of those marked at the center point of those, and then just this center rear portion of the rail is going to get a bolt as well, so that one needs marked. Wanted to mention while I was drilling these out, always double check before you're punching holes in anything that there's nothing underneath like the fuel lines, brake lines, any type of electrical system, wiring. Just triple check underneath the bed before you start putting your pilot holes in. That way you don't end up with another problem that you're going to have to deal with. Now we're going to use the marks that we've made for the bolt holes. We're going to make pilot holes with our 1/8 drill bit. So a couple things you might run into coming down to the wheel well here is you may find a liner. Ours does not have it, so unfortunately I can't show you how to remove that, but instructions do have a clear picture of how to get this wheel well liner out. If you do have one, you might also find that there's going to be an overload bracket that you would need to remove. Again, unfortunately our vehicle does not have it to be able to show you how to do so, but instructions do walk you through step by step on those. What we're looking for down here is these 2 holes and then these 2 at the front. For the bracket, you will need to, on the fronts, use this bottom hole and the center hole, and then at the rear of the vehicle, it will be the bottom hole and the top hole. It does state that in the instructions, but it's worth noting, and also won't line up if you don't have those correct. So I've already got my bracket in for the front one here. You'll want to feed that your wire through the bracket and then attach the spring into your bolt. And we're gonna push this through the hole and then pull that bracket and bolt snug against the frame. Just leave that wire connected for now, because we're gonna get that bottom one lined up as well. I found the easiest way to get this bottom bolt in at the front here is gonna be just lining up our bracket. You'll be able to see the spot where the square part of the carriage bolt is gonna sit, and we'll just run that through and then come back up to the top here, pull that out, and then we can stick that bolt on the spring and pull that through. And once we've got that on, I wanted to show you here on this upper one, we'll have both bolts in place, and to remove these you can just kind of yank them and they'll come apart. They give you enough in the kit that it'd be all right if you take a couple apart. And then our bracket here is just going to be what's going to hold this on while we put the actual mounting bracket up. So these just act as a fastener and thread onto this. We'll go all the way up against the frame so it's nice and snug. And then repeat the same process on the bottom hole, and then we'll head back to the back to do the same thing on the rear. Notable difference between the front and the rear bolts that we're putting into the frame. The rear bolts are going to come through the back side of the frame, so that's part of the reason we've got that heat shield and spare tire out of the way so we can feed these up and through here. I've gone ahead and removed the wires that we used to fish those through and got the brackets on. We're going to use the lock washer provided and then the nut. All of this is staying loose until we've gotten everything lined up and go to torque down. But if you need to determine which side and which position these brackets are going to be, they are labeled in the instruction manual. So just double check that you're putting them on the right side, or you'll be taking it apart to try to get that right. Got our front one on and then the rear here, and we're going to repeat all that on the other side as well. Then we're back underneath the vehicle after the brackets are on. Part of this is I did hand snug up all the hardware for all four of the brackets just to triple check our holes in there to make sure they're going to line up. That way if we need to kind of adjust in front of the hole or to the rear of the hole as far as drilling, we can get these as centered as we absolutely can once we're up top. And with those brackets down below, at least in place and kind of snugged up so we can see where the holes are lining up, I wanted to mention that I had to move the pilot holes on this passenger side just slightly, and all you have to do is just drill next to the original pilot hole. That way you can get that best center on those brackets when we're driving through with this big 9/16 here. So we'll just go ahead, drill all of the 9/16 holes out, and then we'll triple check our alignment for the front with the fifth wheel. And then you may have to step the pilot hole bit up a little bit just so you've got a good grip for your 9/16 here. So I've got the holes drilled to size. They line up real good. I triple checked with all of the bolts, and what I'm going to do is come through with a black paint pen here. You can use spray paint too and try to like tape this off so that it looks good, but the pen seems to clean it up well without making a lot of overspray on the rest of the truck. Now we're going to take the rest of the carriage bolts, get those dropped through the top plate here and into the brackets below. Now we're going to come to this underside here. We've got these U brackets that are going to sit up in the corrugation. Had the holes on the plates aligned with one of our under ones like this, we would have used the spacer up at the top, but now we're going to use them underneath. We'll just slide those into place around the bolt. With the offset brackets here, we're going to make sure that this wider part is going to be facing outwards when we put those up. And that will be followed by a lock washer and then the nut here. And then once we've got this on, we're going to repeat that here and then hop over to the other side and do the same thing. And hopping over from this bracket, we're going to come to the center bracket. It's going to get a spacer, the offset washer, lock washer, and nut all the same. Again, just leaving those hand tight for the moment. Now to get our forward rail measurements, we're going to need to use the fifth wheel here. So I've got the front rail in back behind this, and then we're going to pick up and set this into the braces. And then we'll do the same in the rear, and that'll help us get our holes lined up for the bolts to go through. For the holes, we're going to mimic the front and go the third in on the sides, and then the forwardmost hole on the center. We're going to do the exact same process using our small pilot bit to locate the center of the holes, and then we'll come back with that 9/16 to get those bolts fed through to the front brackets. Now we're going to move to the hardware on the front bracket. It's going to be the exact same process with our spacer in between the bracket and the bed, the offset washer, lock washer, and then the nut. These are going to be a little bit more difficult to access just because we've got our fuel tank in the way, and over here this is right up against the frame and with the exhaust and spring in the way. So just take your time, make sure everything's lined up as best as possible, but we're still going to leave everything just loose until we go to torque. Now we're going to do all the bolts underneath the bed. We're going to wait for the ones on the frame until after we've got all of these snugged. You will want to watch your spacers and make sure that these brackets are sitting flush against the bed. It is going to be a little difficult on the driver's side due to the mounting where the tank, fuel tank is, and then the exhaust on the right side, passenger side, so do be aware of that as well. Now that all the bottom ones are done, we're going to move to our side rails and torque those to the spec listed in the instructions again. And that'll conclude our look at and installation for the B&W fifth wheel rail kit for this 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 2500. My name's Ian with eTrailer, and thank you for watching.